I think black and white captures
Yeah,
moments.
everyone, right?
It
Yeah.
really does. Let's see. My idea of perfect happiness is sex on a Monday. Because it's such a busy day normally. Nobody can have sex on a Monday. It's about you grind, and then that night, you watch Dateline and you fall asleep.
Here I am sitting down with Dane Cook, who I have never met before, and I'm very excited to talk to. He has got a new movie coming out by Pixar called Planes, and also he's about to launch a huge tour called Under Oath.
And I'm retiring today.
Are you?
Based on all this information, it's exhausting to think that there's more to do, but...
You are not the comedian when people think of comedians.
Right.
You're entirely too happy.
That is true.
You're a little too confident, and you don't really have the right slouch.
I grew up loving Steve Martin, Eddie Murphy, even Pryor. They had swagger, they had style, suits and some sophistication. And I always wanted to emulate those guys.
Well, let's talk about social media. That's why I want to bring it back to kind of how you started. Basically, you figured out a way to take MySpace, which now basically feels archaic, right?
Yes.
Now when we talk about where we're at. Right. But you were able to take that and build an empire in the dark. No one even knew it was happening until you're selling out Madison Square Garden and you were the guy. Was that intentional, or was that just kind of you going on instinct and just responding and getting an audience wherever you could?
It was intentional. I grew up with a dad who was incredibly prolific in terms of self-promotion, and he always had businesses. My dad had a lumber company, and then he'd have a aluminum siding business, then he had a window business. And as I got a little bit older, I realized he loved building something from the ground up, but he loved trying to figure out ways to connect with people. Or as he used to say, nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd. And as I was languishing in the late 90s and trying to figure out, how can I not spend 23 hours of the day sitting in my underwear playing video games and eating cereal? How can I use this time? When those sites first came, coupled with when Napster was first out, it was let me upload my material here, let me kind of give it away, and build a grassroots following using an electric handshake with people. Treat it like politics. Spend those several hours during the day just kind of sussing and figuring out where my fans exist and where I should go, so I can pay the rent and buy more cereal and more underwear. So it really started as, I wouldn't say an experiment, because I really loved it. I enjoyed that part of the journey, even though it was still really ragtag and rough. But it was an interesting couple of years, those first. Really seeing it happen before my eyes.
And then it seems like you're at the top of your career, everything you could ever imagine, and then it feels like your world completely collapsed. Now, I was raised Catholic, so I understand you can't be really successful because it's always going to come back and get you, right?
Yeah.
Wherever no good deed goes unpunished.
That is true.
I'm too successful, so something horrible has to happen.
Yes, every bad biblical metaphor we need to...
Now, I'm not trying to put my life onto yours, but I think about it, and you lost your mother to cancer, and then basically 9 months later you lost your father to cancer, and then your brother decided to extort millions of dollars from you. And
it was a third death. It was
someone that you trusted, and I think he's still in jail serving time. And also, that was the Louis C.K. moment of the joke stealing, and everyone kind of really, the gates opened in terms of that. How do you come back from that? How do you deal with that?
You go forward from that, actually. It's really, you quickly learn that I'm not going to be going back to anything. I need to kind of go inward and figure out, okay, how can I exist in this space now? And so I did my shows, and I took care of my family, or I took care of maybe obligations because of the legal system and things that were happening with my brother. And when I came out of that period, it was I was exhausted, and almost to a point where my thank you at the end of the night, my encore coming out and saying thank you, was never truer and more from the heart. They saved me. The one thing I had was people showing up still for my shows. I didn't have my family anymore. I didn't have my brother anymore, my only brother, and it makes the choices that I make now. I'm excruciatingly patient as it is, but it makes the things that I want to do now, that I want to give back to the fans, really, I dedicate a lot of time in coming up with what I think is going to be a real genuine connection, the way I did 12 years ago with the internet, with the work that I choose to do now, or the acts that I choose to, bring out on the road.
All right, so Under Oath, what do we get with this?
Hashtag Under Oath,
The
yes.
hashtag.
Everything's hashtagged these days. What do we get? Well, I like all my titles were always, I always liked strong kind of rock and roll-ish type titles for, whether it was Retaliation or Vicious Circle, Rough Around the Edges. But they all had a theme and had a meaning to where I was at in my life. And I just saw a lot of comics in the media that were dealing with backlash because of their perspective on whatever the story was. And I think that's like the last people that we want to be critical of. I think, why do we want to handcuff comedians? That's part of the escape. That's the pinprick of healing is somebody can say something.
Do you think there's a difference 10 years later in comedy with the PC, all this political correctness and what you can and cannot say?
Well, it's both. It's like I have seen that there was a shift in maybe people, some fear of, what can I say? But now I think that media is changing so rapidly and there's so many different avenues and venues that I think we need to trust not just comics but our artists more, that they have the best idea. Because some of the coolest stuff is really the nuggets, the nitty-gritty stuff that's on the fringe that is now becoming the mainstream.
What's your worst vice on a tour?
I don't have really any vices. This has been one of the most difficult things.
You don't even have a Boston accent. You don't drink, you don't smoke.
I don't. I've never had a drink, or
like
when I'm on tour,
cereal?
I like to Fruit Loops guy.
Fruit Loops guy, okay.
I like to exercise when I'm on the road.
No
I'm not.
wonder they hate you. Are you kidding? Come on.
I need some vices. I've never. I just love work.
How are we with Louis C.K. now?
I actually have a great camaraderie with him now.
Yeah, I love that piece you guys did when you went on his show. It was amazing.
All you have to do is go on YouTube and tell everybody that I did not steal your material.
I never said that you stole my jokes.
You never said it, but you let other people say it. Well, that was, Louis, fortunately for me, he'd reached out and he said, I think we should, sit down and have a chat. And also there's something I'd love to talk to you about. I flew back to New York just for the conversation, just for that moment. And we sat and he handed me the sides to the scene. And, can we read this? And he wanted to read it right there in the room. I thought that was kind of wild and unexpected, but we read it together and it was like, I have to do this. My heroes are my parents, Donna and George, because they were funny. My mother was very physical, very animated, and just a lot of fun, just made people feel good, always made people feel good. And my dad was badass son of a bitch, is what he was, but he always had a cocky swagger. Talked way too long at this point, and it's starting to be weird. So I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to go too. Bye.